Welcome to the Action Network podcast presented by FanDuel. I'm your host, Brendan Glasheen. We are joined by Action Network NFL expert Chris Raybon, who will be providing us with an NFL free agency update in the NFC. We already did our AFC episode, so we continue. Again, we're talking team by team. We'll go in division order, additions, departures, quarterback market, draft capital, whatever. If we have to talk cap space, we will. Raybon can do that too. We'll focus on the NFC. We'll start with the NFC representative in the Super Bowl, the Philadelphia Eagles. They retained a lot. Didn't add a lot, but they retained quite a bit. Darius Slay, that was a roller coaster story. Turns out they did bring him back. Fletcher Cox returns. They add some fringe depth pieces, Mariota, quarterback, Penny at running back. They do lose some key names, though. C.J. Gardner-Johnson to Detroit, Miles Sanders to Carolina, Javon Hargrave to San Francisco. So I was almost said the reigning champs. That would have upset Philadelphia fans. Are the reigning NFC champs, Raybon, are they in a position to be just fine to make another run next year?
I think they'll be able to make another run. I think it'll be a little bit more competitive, even within the division, which was surprisingly competitive last year among the other three teams. The Eagles kind of ran away with it, but I look at some of the guys they lost. Miles Sanders. Well, they signed Rashad Penny. Okay, it's not really it's kind of a wash. They add Greedy Williams. Gardner Johnson. Somewhat of a loss, but he was a little bit inconsistent as well. They do have that deep defensive line, so even losing Hargrave, who was a very good player for them, may not hurt them as much as it does most teams. I like getting Mariota to back up Hurts. I think that gives you kind of a similar type of player, in that backup role that has started games. Lost a little bit of offensive line depth. I think the big thing might be, you lose linebackers, White, you lose TJ Edwards as well. So, Nakobe Dean is going to have to take a big step forward here in year two. I think that's kind of my concern, is that second level of the defense. And of course, the losing the coordinators, right? You lose.
This is true. I didn't mention
Gannon and you lose Steichen, both of those guys. I think those will be the bigger losses. So are the Eagles better than last year? No, they're not going to catch people by surprise this year. And I think the NFC East, as we'll talk about, is probably better. So the Eagles are still, I think, one of the top teams in the NFC, right there with the Niners. But I don't think they're better than last year. I think if they can kind of play to a similar quality as they did last year, if they can kind of field a roster and a team that's of similar quality, I think they'd be happy with that, and they'll be right in that conversation. But in terms of betting value, I think last year was the year to get in, on the Eagles, and now you have some, as we'll talk about, some other intriguing teams here in the NFC, which, unlike the AFC where it tends to be the same few teams, this NFC, I mean, you see teams kind of jump up out of nowhere, kind of like the Eagles did last year. So I think the NFC is where you kind of want to take more long shots. And so the Eagles aren't a team that I'll be investing too much in. I think they'll be happy to just stay just as good as they were last year, but I don't think they got better.
Yeah, they don't fit the criteria for the new team that can take the leap. They did that. They did their leap. They're there.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. We're trying to find other teams, and that relates to quarterback. And we'll get to this as the episode continues. A lot of movement in this conference because teams are just still trying to figure it out. There's more stability in the other conference, like you said, top heavy, and even the teams that are kind of in the middle, they've got some pieces, but we kind of have a feel for who they are. NFC, there's so much uncertainty. Dallas is a team, I think we know who they are, but it all depends on how they execute. Plus 1,500 on FanDuel to win the Super Bowl, sixth shortest odds. They had Brandon Cooks over the weekend at receiver. Leighton Vander Esch, he's re-signed. Stephon Gilmore added at corner. It all sounds good to me. They lose Zeke Elliott. They decide to release Zeke Elliott.
Addition by subtraction.
Addition by subtraction. Yes, Tony Pollard on the franchise tag. They lose Connor McGovern on the O-line, and Kellen Moore is no longer their play caller. So maybe when I asked you in the other podcast about the Chargers, maybe the Kellen Moore question is, how much does this affect Dak and Mike McCarthy and that whole operation? But they do add some key names. I mean, Cooks and Gilmore are good players.
Yeah, I think this has been a good offseason for Dallas. You add legit stars at very important positions in wide receiver and cornerback, and you get rid of Zeke, which at this point I think was holding them back. I think the offensive line still has enough pieces, with the Smiths and you still got Martin and Steele. Like you got enough pieces there on the line, so I don't really see a major weakness on the offense. I think the tight ends, it doesn't look like they're going to get Dalton Schultz back. They might. I mean, if not, I think Ferguson, Hendershot, those guys will have to step up. But still doesn't look like many weaknesses on offense. Now, Mike McCarthy is going to call the plays. Brian Schottenheimer is the OC. That's interesting. I don't know. I don't know that that's an improvement over Kellen Moore, but the hope is, I think, if it can just be a lateral move, this team is very good as it is. I think adding Cooks was kind of the key. And you're also going to have Gallup now another year removed from that injury. So I think the team, you didn't need to do a whole lot there. I don't know if play calling is really what puts you over the top as much as, adding another receiving threat, because, they had Noah Brown and they dusted off T.Y. Hilton. And I think that's really where the issues were on offense. Now on defense, they re-signed a lot of guys, but I think that Gilmore addition is big. So I like the offseason for the Cowboys. I think they're kind of sitting here now in position, to give the Eagles a run for their money. They added some guys they needed to add. They dropped guys they needed to drop. They didn't really lose anything major of note that makes you worry. They tend to want to develop other draft picks, and then they have a pick in each round. So I think Dallas is sitting pretty good here to challenge Philly this year, and they weren't super far off last year, to be honest. But I just think some of those key holes, like the cornerback depth, the receiver depth, held them back.
Well, we saw two games last year where each team had a starting quarterback out.
Yeah,
the game in October when Cooper Rush played and not Dak, and then the game later in the year in December where Gardner Minshew played but Dak played. But yeah, these are moves. I think I still think there was a gap. The gap has shrunk, though, I think, between Dallas and Philadelphia. Giants were one of the shockers of 2022. Brian Daboll rallies that team together. Daniel Jones, he only threw 15 touchdown passes, but he got a big contract, so he's the guy. Daniel Jones is the quarterback, so that's not an addition, but they sure that up for years to come. They add Darren Waller. They give up just a 3rd-round pick. Paris Campbell in at receiver. Still not sure what the deal is with Darius Slayton. They do add at linebacker as well. Okereke, I think is how you say his last name.
Okereke,
sorry.
Yeah.
Okereke from Indy was one of their pickups at linebacker in the offseason. I don't know if personnel is the problem. They've got to let Daniel Jones be more of they've got to figure out another dynamic in his game, turn the page on another layer. Is there another layer to Daniel Jones that can take them another step? So personnel wise, though, I don't think they're about the same team.
Yeah. I mean, I think they had a busy offseason. Let me just give people an idea of some of the moves they made, because they made so many moves. Daniel Jones re-signs 4 years, $160 million. Saquon Barkley back on the franchise tag. Breida, the backup, also re-signed wide receiver. They add Paris Campbell on a 1-year deal. They did re-sign Darius Slayton. They re-signed Isaiah Hodgins. He'll be playing for under $1 million this year.
Oh, they did get the Slayton deal done.
They did get Slayton done. Okay, right. Hodgins is back for a major discount. Yep. And then they signed Sterling Shepard to a 2-year deal. Might not get anything out of him, but good locker room presence at the least.
I haven't heard Kenny Galladay's name yet.
Oh yeah, that's done. But you look at and then they add Darren Waller at tight end. And then you mentioned Okereke, 4 years, $40 million, 22 guaranteed. That gives them a presence on the inside. He was probably worth more to them than most teams at this point, because they really needed somebody at that second level of the defense. They add Rakeem Nunez-Roches interior lineman from Tampa Bay. So they were very busy. They still have, all their draft picks. So what they've done is they've kind of gone, the New England route. They want a lot of depth, but they actually do have pretty decent depth now across the board. So if they are able to hit in some draft picks, they're going to be, I think, in that conversation, right there with Dallas. Now, it's really going to come down to, I think, you probably, even with all the receiving depth they had, I would still like to see them add, a guy in the draft that could become, a number one, in the future for Daniel Jones. Because I really think that's what he's missing. You can't count on Waller to stay healthy, I think, at this point. And he's a tight end. I know he's kind of more like a glorified receiver, but you don't know about the chemistry. So I think ideally, if you've committed to Daniel Jones, now you need to, you filled a lot of holes very efficiently in free agency. I think now you need to really use that draft capital. And it's another team, I think, go out and get some stars. You probably have one budding on defense in Thibodeau, and a couple on that line aside from him. But I think you need more stars on offense to go along with Saquon. And this Giant team, another team that's going to be across the board a pretty solid roster across the board. Another guy in the secondary as well. Like, I'd like to see them go wide receiver. I'd like to see them go cornerback.
Yeah.
And then you hope Neal takes a step forward at right tackle, like Thomas did the year before. Thomas is now, he was a top 3 tackle last year. Neal was not nearly as good. So, this Giant team could be very dangerous. I think they have a ton of upside. And I know Philly and Dallas are probably going to get all the love, and people are going to look at Jones and say, the Giants are going to be mediocre. But I actually thought Jones played very well last year. I think the touchdowns are just more of an indictment on the receiving core. I mean, he was playing with Hodgins and Slayton as his top receivers, but Waller's not enough. Yeah, again, I think they need to use that draft capital and draft a future number one.
Yeah, they've got a lot of 3s and 4s, but your 3s and 4s look a lot better when they're not being 2s and 3s.
Exactly.
And we all know, like, when you go out and get one guy, it changes everything, how you look at depth. So that's fair. Because I a lot of what I said to set you up was, I don't know if there's anything more I can find out unless they let the quarterback, that they allow him to throw more. But maybe the reason why they're not throwing as much is because it's not just the trust in the quarterbacks, it's the trust in what's around them outside of the running backs that can catch the ball out of the backfield. They need some more weaponry at receiver. Okay. Let's move on to the Commanders. Still have the Commanders left in the NFC East. Jacoby Brissett is their option right now at quarterback. Yeah. They add Andrew Wiley at right tackle. They do lose Holcomb to free agency. What are the Commander? I don't know what their owner situation is. Like, what are the Commanders trying to do? It just seems like they're just in the constant cycle of, we don't know what we want to do yet. They have pieces though. They have talent on that team.
Yeah, I think they're in a tougher spot because I do think that I think the Giants have gotten better. I think the Cowboys have gotten better. I think the Eagles, were very good and didn't really fall off too much. We'll see you'll see how the loss of the coordinators affects them. But overall, I think there's more separation now between the top 3 and Washington. And, they don't really have a ton of cap space. They're bottom 5 in cap space right now. And I don't think the roster is there yet to compete with these other teams. Now, they do have a decent amount of draft picks. They drafted 16th overall. They have the 47, the 97, the 118, the 150. So they have a decent amount of picks, but Eric Bieniemy, is he really going to move the needle? Jacoby Brissett, is he really going to move the needle? I don't know. Wiley was average at best. They added him at tackle. The additions they have were pretty average players at best. Wiley, Nick Gates, the interior lineman from the Giants, Cody Barton, the linebacker from Seattle. They lost Cole Holcomb, who was a better linebacker, to Pittsburgh. So I don't think Washington really got better either. So they're really relying on the draft here. They don't have much cap space. So I think there's a gap between Washington at 4 and the Giants at 3 in this division.
it's so annoying though too for a team like them because they can't get any credit for being feisty. Well, they can. You can say, great, you went 8-1, but it's just like if you're just like Carolina and you can trade from 9-1. You can't really, what do you do at 14 when you're a team with so many holes and you've got a lot of talent now in your division? It's amazing.
And you don't know if you have your quarterback of the future either. You don't know. And you don't have the Heineke magic anymore. So
yeah. It's amazing how it's amazing how energy on this division has changed in the last 2 or 3 years. Now it's very, very good, and Commanders got to figure it out.
And the AFC East plays the NFC East this year, so 2 good divisions squaring off.
Yep. Okay, let's go on to the NFC North. We'll start with the Vikings. They were the division winner last year. So Nick Mullins in as the new backup quarterback to Kirk Cousins. I know that wasn't the highlight of their offseason. I'm getting there.
Well, I think he was there last year. I think that was a re-sign.
A re-sign. Okay, so Mullins, yes, that's right. Mullins re-upped. Marcus Davenport added at defensive end. They lose Adam Thielen, which we just found out about this. Thielen to Carolina. We'll get to the Panthers. Panthers and Bears are going to be fun to talk about on this podcast. I think folks are sensing that. Thielen, Patrick Peterson, Dalvin Tomlinson, all out for Minnesota. Don't bury your leads on the other teams, but I think the Vikings, to ask them. So 2 years ago, they couldn't win any one-score games. Last year, they win every one-score game ever. It's just unbelievable luck. That's a whole other discussion as well. Can they meet somewhere in the middle with this current construction of their roster?
I would not bet on it. You look at this team last year, and they were a bottom 6 team in terms of overall DVOA. As you kind of alluded to, they got very lucky with their one-score luck, which is something that tends to regress to the mean in future years. I don't see, in terms of the talent on defense, I don't see them really getting better. I mean, you replace Peterson with Byron Murphy. Maybe long-term that's a plus, but Peterson was the better player last year. Davenport is nice, but you do lose a very good player on the line in Tomlinson. You add Josh Oliver, which, good blocking tight end, but I mean, tight end wasn't really your problem. Dean Lowry was kind of, so-so for Green Bay last year. You re-sign Alexander Madison. What does that mean for Dalvin Cook? I think the big thing here, 2 things. One, if you're going to look for improvement on defense, I think it's going to come less from, what you did in free agency and more from Brian Flores coming in at defensive coordinator to replace Ed Donatel, because Donatel's scheme was just, it just was too vanilla, and they were not good on defense. But you also look at the draft capital here, and they've only got 5 total draft picks and nothing in round 2. So I don't know how much better this team can really get. I think a lot of it is just going to have to come from scheme defensively. And, they're going to have to kind of mitigate some of this regression to the mean in this one-score luck. And, even on offense, I know Cousins had some big games, but it was inefficient at times. I mean, Cousins was taking a lot of attempts to move the ball up and down the field, even with Justin Jefferson. I do think, at this point, maybe Thielen, wasn't adding as much. Like, I don't think the loss of Thielen hurts as much as it may have, a year or 2 ago. But you're still going to have to replace that piece at receiver. So, yeah, I would bet on this team taking a step back, perhaps a major step back, given how these other teams are sitting here in this division. Like, it's not out of the question that Minnesota finishes in last place.
The Lions, they're the fun. They're no longer the fun sleeping underdog here. I think folks are pretty aware that this team could be good. The Lions, I just had it up here. They are the favorite. Yes, they are the favorite to win their division at plus 130 on FanDuel. NFC North winner, Detroit Lions, plus 130. They make additions in the secondary. They get C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Cam Sutton. They do lose Jamal Williams out of the backfield, and they bring that up because of the uncertainty of DeAndre Swift's health. And I think Williams had a great year last year. If you had him in fantasy, I know he was probably awesome because of all the touchdowns. Are the Lions for real?
I think so. Like their coaching staff. I think Jared Goff, especially playing his home games indoors, is giving you above average play at this point with the weapons, with the good old line, with the weapons that they have. And defense was really what you had to fix. You added, first of all, you got a lot better over the second half of the year on defense, but still 23rd in DVOA against the pass. So adding Sutton, Emmanuel Mosley at corner, Gardner Johnson, who can play safety or corner. Those are some big additions for them. And then you mentioned Jamal Williams, but they did add David Montgomery. So I don't think that you're really losing anything from that perspective. So I think this is a very solid all around roster and a lot of upside. Now, as the favorite in this division, you'd still like to see a little bit longer odds. I mean, the hype is, the hype train has left the station with this team. I do think it's warranted though, because everything we've seen, coaching wise, just how they're putting guys in positions. I think this team can be very, very competitive on a week-to-week basis. I think the biggest thing you worry about is, how much can that defense improve from last year? Because, Jared Goff outdoors sometimes, especially late in the year in the cold weather, is a different quarterback. And that's what you're going to need to go deep in the playoffs. So, a better defense would help that a lot. I think the weapons are there. Everything else is in place. So this is a team that's kind of set up well for now and for the future. I mean, they got 5 picks in the top 81 this year. So it's not just the roster we're looking at on paper, which looks pretty good. It could even be better than that when it's all said and done. So I am very bullish on this Lions team, both short and long term.
I don't know though. They're not going to have not many. They'll have some, but not many underdog spots this year based on this. On these.
Oh no, it deservedly so though. I'm going to
miss that though.
Yeah. Green Bay's going to get worse, and we'll see what's up with Minnesota, but Minnesota looks like they're going to take a step back. So it could be Detroit and Chicago this year for the division.
We'll get to Chicago. We'll go to Green Bay first, then we'll hit Chicago. The Packers. We think so. We talked about this in the AFC episode about Rodgers being out. That feels inevitable. Nothing about the Packers relationship. It's all well and good, though. They're going to be, long-term, they're great. But right now in the immediate, they don't want him. I think he's kind of sensed it that he's moved on. I don't see any chance of that happening, of him staying there. They want to go on to Jordan Love. They lose Lazard, but they've got Aaron Jones will be back at running back. I think they need to see what Jordan Love looks like so they figure out what they want to do with him from a contractual standpoint, if they want to commit to him long-term as the guy. I haven't heard your opinion of Jordan Love and what you make of the Packers. What could they do to make the Jordan Love experience more comfortable and make this moving on from Aaron Rodgers relationship easier?
I think Jordan Love looked good in limited action. I think he looked good enough to warrant, giving him this kind of, prove it year, whatever you want to call it, audition year. Now, the receiver room still, I think, you have Christian Watson. He looks like he's going to be a star. Romeo Doubs is kind of hit or miss. He had some potential, but who knows? Same thing with Samori Toure. Tight end still is a whole, Tunyon's gone, but he wasn't the same after his injury. So I do think you need more at the pass catching positions to make Jordan Love's job easier. I think the O-line will still be in good shape. I don't love that they brought back Joe Barry at defensive coordinator. So overall, I think the Packers, probably are going to be a mediocre team, but I think they have a little more downside than up because I really think they should have changed defensive coordinators. Their defense just seems to underperform every year, regardless of how much talent they have, and they tend to have a good amount of it on defense. So that's kind of my worry there. And then you might need 2, 3, 4 guys at wide receiver and tight end. So this is a team that I see them as kind of a 5 to 10 win team, but probably trending more towards the 6, 7, 8 wins, kind of just below average for at least this year.
Okay. And again, we'll find out what happens with Rodgers, but I think it's going to be Jordan Love. Regardless, I think Rodgers might be on the roster, but it could be they're going to play Jordan Love. And finally, the Bears, which they are not. They're last, but certainly not least because they're just so compelling. And I think there's some value that if you jumped in before they made this move for getting all the picks they did for the number one pick. They traded the number one pick to Carolina. Bears get back a future first, 9 this year, a future second. They get DJ Moore, who got buried in that Schefter tweet on the bottom of that list. Oh, yeah, there's just DJ Moore. No big deal. Loved what they've done so far. They bring in Foreman, the running back from Carolina, Tunyon at tight end, Walker to back up Fields. They add Nate Davis from the Titans. They don't have the number one pick, but they get a lot for it. I'm just guessing I would imagine you have some interest in Bears futures.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I mentioned the Lions, should be right there, but they're priced, what was it, plus 130 at the top of that division. Mm-hmm. The Bears are plus 320. And I think they're in position to potentially win this division this year because Justin Fields, if he could just take a step forward with the new weapons, DJ Moore, as you mentioned, a better run game, or even just a similar run game. You're going to have Herbert back. Foreman, I thought was very good. You have the number one receiver in DJ Moore. Now, Nate Davis was a top 20 guard. And then on defense, you had DeMarcus Walker. He was a top 25 guy in the edge. Billings, top 20 guy inside. Edwards at linebacker, top 6 guy. Tremaine Edmonds, a top 8 guy at linebacker. So, that was the big issue, is that defense that was just dead last in DVOA. That defense is going to improve. You have the most cap space in the league. You have 10 picks. You have 4 in the top 64. I mean, there's just so much draft capital, so much maneuverability, and the roster is already significantly more talented. And pretty much everyone you added in free agency is a good player that was, playing at a near the top of their position last season. So I think this Bears team has a ton of upside. I think they're going to be right there, and that's why I'm not as high on the Vikings and the Packers, because I think if anyone's going to challenge this Lions team, it's going to be the Bears, and I think it should be a lot closer than that. Plus 130 for the Lions, plus 320 for the Bears. I think it should be a lot closer because what do the Bears really lack that the Lions don't? I mean, I think Justin Fields, you can't say quarterback Jared Goff versus Justin Fields. He's still got some work to do on the offensive line, I think, for the Bears, but that's not even in terrible shape with the Davis addition. And, the tackle played well last year. So I like this Bears team a lot. I think in the future they're set up really well, but I think, they may surprise some people as early as this year. It's just, they're just so much they can still add to this roster with all the draft capital and cap space that they have.
When the offseason, or right when last year ended, 2022, I think the Bears opened at 40-1 to win the conference, and now they're at 28-1 in the NFC. Super Bowl, they are at, on FanDuel, plus 5,000. So I think there's still some value there in the Bears if they get their picks right and they hit. And at the coaching too, I've got questions, but if they can get the most out of Fields, it's pretty good. On the rookie contract, build around him.
Yep, that's the key. He's got Fields on a rookie contract. He can run. His weapons should be a ton better. His line should be better. His defense should be better. There's a lot to like with the Chicago Bears.
I was thinking before we recorded that the NFC South could be really boring and be kind of a snoozer, but I don't know. This is pretty fun because of that trade. There's a lot of movement. I don't know. I have no idea about this division, about who's going to win it. I think I have a clue. I think I have an idea who's good, but it wouldn't surprise me if any 4 of these teams got it figured out. And maybe Atlanta would be surprising, but we'll start with Tampa. Baker Mayfield at quarterback could earn up to $8.5 million in the contract that he signed. It's a 1-year deal for Mayfield. Jamal Dean re-signed. That was a surprise. I think a lot of folks thought Dean would leave in free agency. Chase Edmonds in at running back. They release Leonard Fournette, and Tom Brady definitely, I think, now retired. So Baker in, Brady out in Tampa with Todd Bowles as the coach still. What do you think of the Bucs?
They seem like a team that's going to be stuck in purgatory at best. Baker, I don't think he's the long-term solution. He had a couple of good games for the Rams, a lot of not so good ones over the past couple of years as well. You saw what can happen when this roster suffers some injuries when guys don't play quite up to what you expect them to play. And now you don't have Tom Brady to even cover for that. So, and Todd Bowles, I don't think he is anywhere near as good of a coach as Bruce Arians was. So I think this team continues to take a step back. Now, again, this division, depending on what happens in the draft with these, with the other teams, or particularly Carolina, I think, there are some question marks still, and it's wide open. But I just don't see Tampa Bay as a team that I think is going to kind of rebound here. I think, if anything, they're going to take a step back without Tom Brady. A lot of these guys, are they going to still be as hungry? They still have a lot of guys that did win the ring a couple years ago. But overall, they didn't really get better in free agency. I mean, they lost Shaq Mason, Nunez Roches, Fournette, Mike Edwards. Additions were few and far between. So, Tampa Bay, I'm not excited about them at all.
Okay. See, that build up I had, and I said, let's just get Tampa out of the way. I kind of agree. Okay. Let's go to the Panthers. Yeah. They were fun. You bet on this team a lot down the stretch last year. Yeah, they were fun. They were a fun team. Because they lost McCaffrey, they moved on from the coach, but they were a feisty bunch, and it's like a whole new team though.
Yeah.
So they get the number one pick. That's the headliner. They get the number one pick from the Bears. They add Miles Sanders. Frank Reich is their head coach. They just got Adam Thielen. They got Hayden Hurst. Andy Dalton is their quarterback for now. He's their established veteran quarterback. Von Bell from the Bengals. Shai Tuttle from the Saints. Ton of moves by Carolina. They've got now they gave up some draft picks to go get one, but that works when you're going to go spend money. No DJ Moore. Foreman's out, as we talked about with the Bears. I mean, I guess I'm not sure how much Stroud, Richardson can Frank Reich's got a lot to work with though in that offense.
Yeah, this team does have some upside, but at the same time, we saw them improve drastically when Wilkes kind of took over as coach, and even with lesser talent a lot of the time, and you just wonder, were they playing harder for him? Is Frank Reich a guy who's gonna get them to play as hard? Because he never struck me as that guy, in Indianapolis, but he has had some winning seasons. But, some of the guys that were key contributors, Deontay Foreman, DJ Moore, they're gone. A lot of the guys they add are kind of middling guys. I think Von Bell's a good addition, but, Shai Tuttle, Deshaun Williams, Hayden Hurst, even Miles Sanders, like these guys aren't moving the needle. Thielen's past his prime as well. So if you're just, Thielen for more is a downgrade. So they still have to hit on a quarterback. I'm just not a huge believer that Frank Reich is a needle mover for a team like this. So I think this team's going to be a little overhyped just based on all of the change. But I see a lot of the things that, they kind of hung their hat on down the stretch last year might not quite be the same, like some of the key players, the coach, even Darnold, you can have a new quarterback. It's just, I think this team's upside is kind of similar to maybe what Andy Dalton and the Saints were doing last year.
Interesting.
But yeah, I'm not sitting here and saying, I don't put Carolina in that Chicago bracket, I guess you could say. I think Chicago's much more well-positioned, Carolina, not quite as much draft capital. They got the 1, then they got the 39 to 93, and then they got 3 more on day 3. That's it. So I don't love Carolina quite as much, and I'm just not sold on anything being a major needle mover here. So I think things could I think there's more downside at this point based on how, everyone else is kind of looking at them in the market and saying, this team might have some upside. I like the aggressive move, go get the number 1 pick, but you got to make it work. And even if you do, I don't know if there's going to be much there, at least, from my vantage point, in year 1, even with an improved quarterback. I think there's just a lot of mediocre players across this roster.
Interesting. That makes sense. I mean, they could hit on the quarterback, but
they could.
But the rate in the conference lately hasn't been great. Or like it could be a Justin Fields thing where it could take a year or two to figure it out.
That's what I think is the most likely.
Yeah, they just got so many the moves they made in the offseason. But I see your point because like the idea of betting on them at the end of last year was guys were playing for jobs too.
Yeah. And I mean, what's the needle mover? Like what move is actually like outside of let's say you get a quarterback at 1-1. Okay. But like, what are the moves in needle mover? Like Foreman was great. You can't say Miles Sanders is going to be an upgrade. True. You can't say Thielen's going to be an upgrade on Moore, Tuttle, Williams, solid players. Von Bell is probably the best player they added. So it's just like, I don't see a ton of needle movers. And new coaching staff,
Miles Sanders if they go Richardson at quarterback or even Stroud, he's mobile too. That could be a fun dynamic. Frank Reich got something going there with the running game in Indy, but is that a needle mover to win a division?
Yeah, the running game is the least important fact. We know that, I just don't see the needle mover. Obviously the quarterback has to be the needle mover, but year one, I don't see it.
Once again, tune into our NFL draft episode, which is coming out Wednesday. Yes, should be out Wednesday. We're recording Wednesday. We'll be out. Myself, Luke Swain, Travis Reed. We're giving you the latest how to bet the NFL draft and also just what's been going on. We haven't had an episode since that trade. Okay, the Saints, they add Derek Carr. They bring in Jamal Williams after having a monster year. They restructure some deals for current players, Michael Thomas, Cam Jordan on the defense. They lose Davenport and Tuttle to free agency. Okay, so you just said it there a second ago. The Saints with Andy Dalton last year, they'll be in games or they'll hang around 500. They went 7-10. What about Derek Carr now having a competent? We think while there's star players, the Saints are getting older on that side of the ball. Is it like too little, too late for Derek Carr to go to this team? Like maybe if he was there a couple years ago with that defense and how their offense was playing, Derek Carr would be great. But does he move the needle in New Orleans?
I don't know if he moves the needle. I think health, is going to play a big factor too. I mean, if you could keep Michael Thomas healthy, Olave is great. Even he missed some games. I think Rashid Shaheed had some upside too. So I like the receivers. Johnson came on at tight end. The running back should be fine. I think the tackle situation should be good. Maybe I think the thing you worry about with Carr is going to a new system. Can he, is it going to be an issue kind of like it was when McDaniel comes over and he just does not play well, last year with in a new system. So I think that's the biggest concern. But beyond that, I think you're in a decent spot to at least win this division here. I mean, on defense, you still got, I know you lost some guys up front to teams in the division, but you still got Jordan. You still got Carl Granderson on the edge. You still got Davis at linebacker, who is very good. You still got, a couple of good safeties as well. So I think this is still the most complete team. I think Derek Carr, obviously is a concern in terms of how much he picks up the offense, but when you look at across the division at the rosters and the quarterback situations of the other team, I think New Orleans should be a clear favorite. And I do think they have some upside if they can stay healthy, especially if they can keep, Thomas, Olave, Shaheed, on the field at the same time for Derek Carr. I think they'll be in a pretty decent spot because they're going to pick up wins in the division if they can kind of keep everybody healthy. And
they draft, where are the Saints in the draft? They had to give one up, right? Because of the they got one from the Sean Payton trade. No, but that one went. What happened with the Sean Payton draft pick?
Where did this? I'm not sure. I know they have let's see. They have the 29. They have 8 picks in total. Yeah.
That pick went to Philly.
So they still have, so they have a pick in each of the first, in each of the first 3 rounds, and they have 8 total. So, nothing crazy there, but I think this team right now is the best, still has the best roster. It's nothing special, but I still think they have the best roster in the division. And if they can stay healthy, I think they'll be kind of the clear favorite.
29. Yeah, they draft 29th. So they still have a first round pick. They're just not in the top 10.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
You have the 29th, the 40th, the 71st. Those are picks on days 1 and 2.
Saints plus money right now, plus 115 to win the NFC South over at FanDuel. Okay, we'll wrap with the Atlanta Falcons. They also went 7-10. Heineke at quarterback. Desmond Ritter's still on the roster. He was their draft pick out of Cincinnati last year. So no Mariota. Mariota's out. Mariota's in Philly. And they had Jonnu Smith. They give Jesse Bates a ton of money. They re-up Lindstrom at offensive line. They're reportedly not in on Lamar Jackson. That bums me out. I think he would fit in well there. I'm not sure what to make of the Falcons. Are they going to be horrible?
I think they're going to be horrible. They did, but I still don't like the quarterback situation. I mean, I still don't think you have your quarterback of the future. You're still going to kind of be in this quarterback no man's land. But you do have some talent at the skill positions, young talent, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Tyler Algier. You have which should be a solid offensive line, and with the upside to be even better than that, the upside to be very good. And then on defense, you add Onyemata, you add Caden Ellis, you add Jesse Bates, you still have AJ Terrell. So I think this is the other team, in this division that I see challenging New Orleans. I think a lot of people might say it's Carolina. Some people might say, hey, Tampa Bay still has, a lot of the roster from the Super Bowl championship, even without Brady. Maybe they can kind of, stumble their way into a division title. But to me, Atlanta is a team with the most upside, because I could see them, still being still being an average team. And remember, this team, even with Mariota last year, their offense was actually pretty solid for much of the year. They were efficient because they were able to run the ball. They finished 13th in offensive DVOA, third in rushing DVOA. So, even with very bad quarterback play, this is still an above average offense last year. Now, maybe it's Heineke, maybe Ritter takes a step forward, and maybe they do something in the draft. Who knows? Maybe they, we don't know, but I do think this team has upside. I think the O-line has a lot of upside. I think the secondary can be solid, especially adding Bates. You have two legit, stars in that secondary, and Bates and Terrell, and you got the young talent at the skill position. So I think Atlanta, to me, is still the second best team in this division.
Wow.
At this point. I think they're better than Carolina. I think Tampa Bay, I'm just not a believer in Baker Mayfield. I don't think Kyle Trask is ready. Maybe Tampa Bay does something more than that at quarterback. Maybe we kind of restart the conversation. But right now, if I'm betting, it's New Orleans and it's Atlanta.
Interesting. Okay. You're higher on Atlanta than I would have imagined, but all right. Fair enough. Let's go to the NFC West. Before we wrap, we'll start with the 49ers. San Francisco came up short. They got blasted by the Eagles in the NFC Championship game. Their quarterback got hurt. The story of Brock Purdy came to a horrible end. But they add Sam Darnold in the offseason. Javon Hargrave comes from Philly to San Francisco. They lose defensive coordinator DeMeco Ryans. He's now the Texans head coach. Garoppolo's out. They're still trying to figure out Trey Lance and what his health may be. But there were rumors about Deebo Samuel earlier in the offseason, but Deebo remains intact. They have McCaffrey for a full season. Kittle's back. Defensively, mostly intact from what they had last year. Mostly. They add Hargrave to that mix. They did lose a little bit in the middle of the defense. Not much, but I think the Hargrave addition's a big one. San Francisco, I can't imagine there's a ton of value at this point with them. But are they, what do you make of the dynamic at quarterback? The Darnold addition, can he sort of keep, as I said, I've used this line before, keep the train on the tracks before they figure out what's up with Lance or Purdy, because they're both banged up?
Yeah, I think he can. I part of the reason I was betting on Carolina so much down the stretch, because I felt like Darnold was he was playing well. He was playing well. He's playing within the system. Obviously now he's coming to a new system, but I still think that, you look at his draft pedigree, he was always expected to be a solid player. And you just look at the guys that San Francisco have allowed to put up, above average efficiency. I mean, it wasn't just Jimmy G. Guys like Nick Mullins were putting up, 8 yards an attempt at times in San Francisco. So I think the fact that you add Darnold to a room with Purdy and Lance, you don't have as much downside and you have a lot of upside in that quarterback room. And the rest of the roster, to your point, is stacked. I mean, your additions on defense are Hargrave, who was, one of the top interior linemen in the game. And you add Isaiah Oliver at corner. And he was a top 10 corner last year in PFF grades. And Charvarius Ward was a top 10 corner as well. So, yes, you still want, Diamador Lenore to take a step forward, but and you do lose Ward, but you had an embarrassment of riches at safety. So you still have Hufanga and Gibson who played very well there. You're going to get, all pro play out of Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw. So this roster is still stacked. They've shown they don't need, an elite quarterback with this roster. And the roster remains intact. We'll see, losing D'Amico Ryans, maybe they take a little bit of a step back, but it's hard to imagine a massive step back on defense just with all the talent they have. So, I think San Francisco, they are the favorite. I think they're like minus 150 to win the division, but I think they're a pretty safe bet because there's 3 different quarterbacks who you could play, and I don't think any one of them really, knock their chances down. So, they could continue to suffer injuries at that position and still, we saw them go all the way to the championship game. So I think they're a safe bet, even though they're slightly juiced here to win the division, because I just think there's a huge gap between them and everybody else.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Kyle Shanahan, too, has always had a lot of admiration for Sam Darnold. So he finally gets to see what he's got with him.
That's true. That's a good point. We haven't seen Darnold. He was looking a lot better just, with Carolina down the stretch and that new coaching staff over the second half of the year. Now, with an offseason with Shanahan, I mean, we could see another step forward from Darnold. And, maybe, we've seen him play well for short stretches. And that might be all the 49ers need. They can get, 6-7 games out of Darnold at the right time. That might be what they need. So, I really wouldn't have hesitation about betting the Niners to win the division. It's not a sexy bet, but I do think it's a pretty high floor bet.
Minus 160 right now over at FanDuel.
Yeah, not sexy, but high floor.
Okay. I'm fascinated if and when Lance is ready by like week. Well, he actually is he going to be ready by August? We don't know yet, right? Lance? I don't think so.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, and even if he is, I think there's going to be a competition at quarterback. Yes, I would think, as well as Purdy played, and the fact that Darnold did show some upside. I think just given the guys you have in that room, I don't think it would be. I don't know how you don't just say may the best man win at this point. No one's really that established to where you can just kind of hand the reins to one guy. If anyone was that guy, I guess you'd probably just hand it to Purdy because he led you. He played so well down the stretch, but now he's coming off an injury. So yeah, I think it'll be a open competition.
Seattle Seahawks retain Geno Smith at quarterback. They do pick high in the draft. Other than that, really quiet offseason. Devin Bush signed in free agency. Julian Love at safety. They got Evan Brown on the offensive line. Michael Jackson at corner signed to a deal. Released Quentin Jefferson. I guess they're a team, and again, tune into the draft show that we do every week, the Action Network podcast, NFL draft preview shows that we're doing each week now leading up to the draft in mid-April. What do you make of the Seahawks sticking with Geno Smith, 3 years, 100 plus, and how they've constructed their team to try and stay in the hunt and keep up with San Fran?
Yeah, San Fran's rosters are so great across the board that I think it's going to be hard for Seattle to overtake them. But, if you're looking to fade San Francisco or you're just looking at, a team with some upside, I would look at Seattle because the one thing that Seattle has and that San Francisco actually doesn't have is early draft capital. San Francisco has a ton of picks in the draft. I believe they have 11 picks, but none before the third round. And that's the end of the third round.
Right.
The Seahawks have 10 picks. 4 of those picks are in the top 52. So, and we've seen how well the Seahawks have drafted at some of the, some of the guys they found. Tariq Woolen, stands out in the draft. So if they can hit on a few picks, like I don't think it's going to be enough. They probably have to hit on 3, 4, all four in those first four to even think of coming anywhere close to San Francisco. But I do think they have some upside, to take this roster that we see on paper, which is I would say pretty average, and take it into that above average, to good territory, because, I do like Woolen. I think that secondary, you still have Adams and Diggs at safety. I think you can stand to get better up front. And maybe that's where a lot of the picks will go. But you have young guys on the O line. And I think that you have some room for growth there. You have good running back, good receivers. Geno Smith, kind of changed his whole games a lot better now. So I think this is another one of these teams that does have some upside to make a run, and they have the draft capital to surprise some people, because even once they make their picks, I think on paper they're going to look better. But then we've just seen how some of these guys can have even more upside than you would think, that this team is kind of unearthing. So I'm looking at this Seattle team, and I'm going to be very interested in their draft with their 4 picks in the top 52. They're 10 in total. I like this team, to make a playoff run. I don't think they overtake San Francisco, but if you're looking for a long shot, I think this has to be it in this division. And I think this could be a legit playoff team if they draft well.
You're in Los Angeles, right?
Yep.
What's up with the Rams, man? Like Cooper Kupp got hurt. Stafford got hurt. A lot of guys got hurt. They lost Jalen Ramsey in the offseason. Baker Mayfield, that he chose not to bring back Mayfield. I think that's a sign that Stafford's got. It's almost too quiet with the Rams. Very flashy team that went out and made a bunch of moves to win the Super Bowl, all in. And I haven't heard much about him. Like Sean McVay was rumored to maybe go to do television, and now he wants to coach. I would like to think he doesn't want to coach a rebuild. I don't know what to say about the Rams. Are they thinking like, well, we'll just get our team back, we'll be healthier, and then we'll go from there?
I think that's part of it, but I also think they were kind of prepared for this as, you win the Super Bowl, you make a lot of win now moves, and you're going to have to pay for that at some point. Money. And, yep. You paid for it last year, and you see this year, I mean, nothing of note, in free agency in terms of the sign. I mean, they re-signed Coleman Shelton. That's about it.
Write that one down.
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah. You lose Jalen Ramsey to Miami, Greg Gaines, but Stafford, he's still in limbo. We're hearing trade talks with him. So I almost wonder if this is the Rams just viewing this as a rebuild year. I mean, trading Ramsey would certainly suggest so. They do have 11 picks now, none in round 1, but they do have 11 picks. They have the 36th pick, and that's in round 2. And then they have a couple in round 3 as well. So my sense is that they're looking at this as a rebuild year. I don't think they're really counting on Matthew Stafford, to go win them another Super Bowl, to be honest. I think, if he wants to be here another year, that, he'll be here, but there's rumors of him retiring. There's rumors of him getting traded. And I just don't think the roster at this point is in a position, to compete with San Francisco, and who, by the way, always has their number anyway. And, you just look at this roster and it's in no position to compete with San Francisco. So I think they're viewing this as a rebuild. I think the fact that McVay kind of said, okay, you know what, I do want to continue coaching. They probably looked and said, okay, if we want to get back to, where you're going to Super Bowls every year, we might need to take this year and just kind of, ride it out. And, no one's going to question you. You got the ring for us. You've been to 2 Super Bowls already. So that's just my sense. I mean, I don't know how you look at it any other way, just given the roster. I don't even see how especially once the draft is all said and done. Mm-hmm. I just don't even see how they compete with Seattle.
Rams have 3 picks in the top 77. No firsts. That's going to be a theme with this football team for a while. No first round picks again. Okay. And we wrap with the Arizona Cardinals. Jonathan Gannon is their new head coach. No more Cliff Kingsbury. No, our director of audio at Action Network, Matt Mitchell, is very sad about that. No more fading Cliff. We don't know about DeAndre Hopkins yet, where he may end up, if he'll be back. This is kind of a mess. Kyler's hurt. We don't know Kyler's timetable, similar to what we talked about with Lance in the same division. Stafford, we don't. Now there's this division. I mean, outside of, even San Francisco, a good team. They've got some questions. And Gino is probably the only sure thing we know in this division at quarterback for the whole season, I think. Depending on what they do, imagine they draft Richardson, then it's a whole cluster. What about the Cardinals? Is there any hope for this team the way they've participated in the offseason?
I hate writing off teams in March, but I'm gonna say no, because I think that like they've shown they could stay afloat with Colt McCoy as a backup. But missing Kyler's a big loss. They obviously have talent at receiver, but it looks a lot different if DeAndre Hopkins is not at the top of that depth chart. And the defense, Gannon is a defensive guy, but not working with a ton. You lose J.J. Watt, you lose Zach Allen, you lose Byron Murphy, so you're gonna have to. It's probably going to take a year for him to get the guys on that roster that he wants. They do have 9 total picks. They do have the number 3 overall. They picked third in the second round as well, and the third, and then they have the 96 pick. So they do have decent draft capital, but when I look at this roster, I just think they're going to need more than 1 year. Yeah, I think the best they can hope for is maybe kind of outperforming their win total, which I'm guessing will be probably like 5.5 or something like that. And maybe they're a feisty 6, 7, 8, even 8 win team, but I can't see this team having a winning record and challenging San Francisco for the division title.
We shall see. I mean, I've got FanDuel up right now. I only see 1 win total right now. It's the Saints at 9.5. I don't know why I can't see anything else, but
I think they're not. I think they're kind of holding off on some of these until we get more certainty, especially with Lamar Jackson still up in the air. And
right,
yeah. So,
yep, no question, Lamar, and if Aaron Rodgers gets done,
yeah, so. There's a lot going on.
Yeah. That's a way to remind everybody again. We have an AFC free agency update episode available where we talk Lamar, we talk about Aaron Rodgers, if indeed he is a Jet. So check out the other one. We broke it up into 2 parts. Also, as a reminder, new episode of the March Madness player props episodes we've been doing for the tournament will be out Wednesday afternoon. Sean Kerner, Nick Giffen, myself, Sweet 16 player props. Nick Giffen's been crushing it. Kerner too. Giffen's on a roll. So you want to tune into that. And also starting Thursday, we'll have our new NFL draft betting update episode, which is coming to you every week leading into the draft. So yes, Thursday is when our next draft episode will be available. I'll be with Luke Swain, aka Vegas Refund, and Travis Reed. For Chris Raybon, Brendan Glasheen, thanks for tuning in to our NFL free agency update NFC episode. And thanks for listening, as always, to the Action Network podcast presented by FanDuel.